aside from my own films and share my love for great cinema itself, it's time to get back to reviewing some movies again. And there's no better way to start off than with the classic Universal monsters, starting with Frankenstein. Produced by Universal Pictures, based on the book by Mary Shelley, and directed by James Whale. Starring Boris Karloff as the monster, Colin Clive as Dr. Frankenstein, and Dwight Frye as Fritz. Now, for those who don't know, there are similarities between the movie and the book, but I like to focus on the plot itself first. It starts off in a creepy cemetery after a funeral burial has occurred. Dr. Frankenstein and his assistant Fritz dig up the fresh corpse and then cut down a hangman. Dr. Frankenstein wants to use those gathered body parts for his own creation, but all he needs is one thing left: the human brain. Dr. Waldsman, who is Dr. Frankenstein's former professor, is teaching a science class demonstrating the difference between the normal brain and the abnormal brain. Fritz breaks in after the class ends and first attempts to steal the normal brain, but he drops it. He doesn't know what to do, so he steals the abnormal brain, which is why Frankenstein becomes how he is. Dr. Waldman, Victor, and Dr. Frankenstein's fiancée show up during the attempt to bring his creation to life during a terrible thunderstorm. First, he doesn't want them there and attempts to make them leave, but then decides to let them witness the miracle. Frankenstein uses the lighting to bring the body to life, he freaks with joy, and we get one of the most iconic lines in the whole movie.
It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Everyone thinks he's crazy for bringing a dead body to life and go over the consequences on what can occur. But of course, Frankenstein is in denial. They use the suspense brilliantly in this movie. You don't see the monster right away. Once he does show up, there he is walking backwards into the room, slowly turns, and we get those creepy jump cuts to his face. Still brilliant today. Things are going good with the monster obeying Frankenstein's every commands and learning things, but then Fritz just has to show up with fire, which angers the monster. They have to confine him in a cell. Fritz tortures him some more, which gets him killed off camera. Frankenstein needs to sedate him, allowing dissection from Waldman. The monster awakens and kills him. He escapes, meets a little girl that starts off as a game, tossing flowers into the river. He checks if she can float too, but accidentally kills her, which scares him off. The monster horrifies Frankenstein's wife on their honeymoon, and outrage begins. The villagers are outraged by this monster and go after it with burning torches. Frankenstein confronts his creation. The monster drags him to the top of a windmill, tosses him from the top, hitting one of the sails. The fire gets more nuts and the monster burns. And it turns out that Dr. Frankenstein is okay, and we see him the next day recovering, and that's that. Now, as I was saying earlier, there are some similarities between the movie and the book. In the book, when Dr. Frankenstein creates the creature, he is absolutely disgusted by it. But in the movie, he is very confident in his creation. In the movie, the monster frightens Dr. Frankenstein's wife on their honeymoon, but in the book, he actually kills her. At first, Bela Lugosi, who was Dracula, was sought out for the role of Frankenstein, but Bela Lugosi turned it down because he didn't like the concept of his face being covered up and having no dialogue, which is understandable. But director James Whale saw Boris Karloff in a film called The Criminal Code in 1931 and thought his face was just perfect to play the monster. Wise choice, Mr. Whale. Universal at the time thought that some things in the film were just too graphic for audiences to see, that they cut out the film, which are pretty tame to see today, such as the needle being injected into the monster, and then Frankenstein throwing the little girl into the river, including Dr. Frankenstein's iconic line, because many people would consider it sacrilegious.
Oh, in the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
Every actor's performance in this film is absolutely brilliant, and I love Boris Karloff's performance as the monster. but in my opinion, who steals the show absolutely is Colin Clive as Dr. Frankenstein and Dwight Frye as Fritz. Sure, his performance isn't over the top like he usually is in these classic monster films, but man, what a brilliant performance. I absolutely love it. Frankenstein has a huge legacy. It's a timeless classic that'll never go anywhere. I mean, kids still to this day want to be him for Halloween. We still see action figures of him today. There's been great horror movie spoofs of Frankenstein such as Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, Frankenthumb, and my personal favorite, Young Frankenstein. The classic Universal monsters are the Beatles of horror films. They are timeless and are never going anywhere. Thank you, true cinema lovers, for watching, and see you guys next time for my review of The Bride of Frankenstein. Keep getting your cinema on.
Thank you.